we have a pretty good variety to practice the stuff that we've already learned. First couple of problems are the ones that we did earlier this week, the ones where we have the variable in different places. Okay, so we have an A when we start circling our variables. We see we have an A here, and we have an A here. So we've got the variable in different places. So to get that A by itself, we're going to have to get it in one place. We can't get it by itself when it's in different places. So what are we going to do first? We do need to distribute first. So we're going to distribute what here? We need to distribute the 5. So the idea here is we're getting rid of the parentheses. 5 times 2A is 10A. And 5 times negative 1 is negative 5. All right, and then what do I do with everything else? Just bring everything else down. So when I bring everything else down, I've got the 3A here. I've got the negative 18 here. And then what am I missing? Missing equal sign, and I'm missing one other thing too. Yeah, so I need something between the 3A and the 10A here, and this 10A is positive or negative? It's positive, so I'm going to put a plus in there. Okay, now what? Good, so we're going to take the 3A and the 10A, we're going to combine those because they are like terms, and 3A plus 10A is 13A, so we get 13A there. And again, like on the last step, anything that can't combine, we just bring down, so we bring down our minus 5, got our equal sign on the line, and then our negative 18 here. Okay, now what? Yeah, now we're just solving like we normally do. So add 5 on both sides to get rid of the minus 5. So that gives us 13A on the left. And on the right side, negative 18 plus 5 is? Negative 13. Okay, then what?
Divide by 13.
Divide by 13. And on the left side, when those 13s cancel, we get A. On the right side, negative 13 divided by positive 13 is? Negative 1. Same type of problem here. We see that when we circle the variables, we have it in multiple places. So we're going to start by doing what? After we circle a variable and draw the line, of course. Distribute. All right, so we're going to distribute the 2 times 3e and get 6e, and 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. And then on the other one, we have a 2 times the parentheses here also. So 2 times e is? Okay, why do you say negative 2e? Why is it negative? Yeah, this 2 here is negative, so it's negative 2 times e gives us negative 2e. And then negative 2 times negative 2 is? Positive 4. So it's a negative times a negative here, which gives us a positive. All right, that's an easy thing to mess up. Make sure that when you multiply a negative times a negative, you get the positive. Because if you have a minus 4 there, you're going to get a different answer, right? And then on the other side, got our equal 4. Now what? Yeah, so we've got 6e minus 2e is 4e. And negative 8 plus 4 is? Negative 4. And on the other side, we still have our 4. Now what?
We add 4.
Okay, lots of 4's going on here. So we're adding 4 to both sides. On the right side, those 4's cancel, leaving 4e. On the left side, 4 plus 4 is? 8. And then divide by 4 gives us e on the right side and 2 on the left. This is going back a couple weeks now. We have an equation with a square in it. So we always start the same, circle variable, draw the line of equality. But now we also need to box that square. And that boxing the square is just a reminder that I need to get the square by itself before I can do anything else. Now, why did I put my box around the 3n plus 2 also? Yeah, because that's what's in the parentheses, and the parentheses is what's being squared. So that 3n plus 2, that whole thing is all part of the square. All right, so since that's all part of the square, what two things do I need to get rid of to get that square by itself?
The 5 and the 1.
The 5 and the 1. And how am I going to, sorry, which one do I need to get rid of first?
The 1.
The 1. And how do I get rid of that?
80.
Okay, so we'll add 1 on both sides. And when we do that, the 1's cancel and everything else over there drops down. So we still have the 5 times the parentheses 3n plus 2 squared. And on the right side, 79 plus 1 is 80. We still need to get rid of the 5 by doing what? Divide by 5. Okay, and when we divide by 5 on the left, we have to divide by 5 on the right. So when those 5's cancel, what do we have left?
3n plus 2
Squared. Don't forget that square. And then on the right side, 80 divided by 5 is 16. Okay, then what? Okay, now we need to get rid of that square. So to get rid of the square, we use a square root. All right, so I'm going to take the square root on the left. That's going to get rid of the square. But if I take the square root on the left, I have to take the square root on the right. Whatever I do on one side, I do on the other. On the left side, the square and the square root cancel, leaving 3n plus 2. On the right side, we're looking for a number that multiplies by itself to get 16. 4 times 4 is 16, right? Is there any other way I can multiply a number to get 16? Negative 4 times negative 4. All right, so when we take the square root, remember that's the time where we're going to get two different answers. All right, so not only do we get 3n plus 2 equals 4, but we also get 3n plus 2 equals negative 4. Make sure you get both of those. All right, and the reason is negative 4 times negative 4 is also positive 16. All right, so both of those give us, this last equation gives us both of these equations. Either one could be true. All right, so now let's continue solving. On the one on the left, we're going to subtract 2 from both sides. And when those 2's cancel, that leaves what?
3n
Equals, what do we get on the right side? 2. Okay, then what?
divided by 3.
Divide by 3 on both sides. And when those 3's cancel, we get n. On the right side, what's 2 divided by 3? Can't do it, right? So do I just punch it in my calculator and type in, or write my answer 0.666666 and I'm done? No, we don't want to write our answer like that. How should I write my answer? So if we can't divide 2 divided by 3, what kind of number should I use to write my answer? Well, it wouldn't be an improper fraction, but it's going to be a fraction, right? So we'll just leave our answer as a fraction. We'll just leave it 2/3. We get 2 on top and 3 on the bottom, and so that's going to be our answer. At least one of our answers. Now, on the other one, we want to get that n by itself. We're going to follow the golden rule. We'll remind ourselves of that by drawing a line of equality. Don't forget to do that. And we're going to take the same steps. We're going to subtract 2 from both sides. And on the left side, those 2's cancel, leaving 3n. On the right side, we get, what's negative 4 minus 2?
6.
How about negative 6? All right, and then we divide by 3 on both sides. And this time we can divide it, right?
Yes.
So when we divide it here, we get n equals negative 2. All right, so if we get an answer where we're dividing numbers that don't divide evenly, that's okay. You can just leave your answer as a fraction. If you do that, though, you want to make sure you reduce the fraction. So when we got the fraction 2/3 here, can we reduce that? Can you reduce 2/3? No. What if we got something like 2/4? 2/4. Would we be able to reduce that? Yeah. So you want to make sure if you get an answer that can reduce, you do that. All right, how about this one? Make it a little easier here. We'll circle the P, draw the line of equality, and then since this one has a square root, we also need to do what? Box the square root, right? Now, we box it because we need to get that square root by itself. Is there anything outside of the box that we need to get rid of? No. So we have the square root by itself, so we can go ahead and do what? Square it. So we're going to get rid of the square root by squaring it. Remember, squares go up and to the right, so we square both sides. When we square the left side, that's going to cancel out with the square root. Those are both gone, leaving what?
P plus 3.
P plus 3. And on the right side, 3 squared is 9. And then what?
Subtract 3.
Subtract 3 on both sides. And those 3's cancel, leaving P. And 9 minus 3 is 6. And the last one. This one's kind of like what we saw yesterday with the inequality. There is going to be a little bit of a trick to this one, but it's going to start out just like what we did yesterday. So what does this symbol right here mean again? Less than. So what that means is if I start with a number, plug it in for A, and I multiply it by -2, and then I subtract 1, it's going to have to be less than 5. All right, so let's try to figure out what kinds of numbers we could plug in for A and make that work. So we want to get that A by itself, so I'll circle that. I'm going to draw my line through the inequality here. This is not an equation anymore because it doesn't have an equal sign, so we call it an inequality. And that's going to help me keep the left and the right side separate. And I want to get that A by itself, so what am I going to do first? Add 1. All right, if I add 1 on both sides, I don't have to worry about this. So basically, if I know the left side's smaller than the right side, and I add 1 to both sides, I still know the left side's smaller than the right side. So I don't need to worry about any tricks there. So we're going to have -2A on the left. We're going to have 6 on the right. And what goes on the line? Not greater than. It's less than, right? Okay, so we've got -2A is less than 6. Now what?
Divide by -2.
Divide by -2. So we divide by -2 on both sides. And when we divide by -2 on the left, the -2's cancel and we get A. And on the right, 6 divided by -2 is -3. But this part here is a little bit tricky. So we're doing something to this inequality that's really changing it a lot. So what we're saying is -2 times some number is less than 6. But I'm going to divide by a negative number. If I divide by a negative number, what does that do? If I divide a negative by a negative, it changes it to a positive number. If I divide a positive by a negative, it changes it to a negative number. So what we're doing is when we divide by a negative, we're flipping negatives and positives. So if we're flipping negatives and positives, if the left side was smaller than the right side, but now I'm just flipping the whole number line because I divided by a negative, do you think it's still going to be less than?
No.
What's it going to do? It's going to become greater than. So anytime we divide by a negative number, we're going to flip the number line basically. Anything that was negative is now positive. Anything that was positive is now negative. So everything's flipping over. So we're also going to have to flip that inequality. Instead of less than, it's going to be greater than. All right, that's really important because it's a big difference to say that something is bigger than -3, greater than -3 like we have here, rather than saying something is less than -3. All right, it's, well, completely different numbers. All right, so anytime you divide by a negative number, it flips the number line on us basically. It changes all the positives and negatives, it changes all the negatives to positives, so we're going to have to flip the inequality also. What else do you think would cause that to happen? If we divide by a negative, it changes negatives to positives and positives to negatives. What else would do that? Besides dividing by a negative. Multiplying by a negative. So if you ever have to multiply by a negative number, it would do the same thing. All right, so our answer here is going to be A is greater than -3, not A is less than -3. Like I said yesterday, this is something that you're going to see on Khan Academy. So when you're solving inequalities on Khan Academy, you'll want to keep this in mind because they will have you solve inequalities that you'll have to either divide by a negative or multiply by a negative.